Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Maria Gonçalves podcast. I'm your host, Maria Gonçalves, and today we have a special guest and my co-host, Dana Louise, all the way from Australia.
Hi, everyone.
And we have Bobby Kitsios. Did I say that correctly, your last name?
Yes, you did.
Thank you. And Bobby is a minister for the Journey Within. He is an evidential medium and he is based in New York, USA. So welcome, Bobby.
Hello, thank you for having me here. And hello, everybody listening.
So, Bobby, one of the questions I'm always curious. Well, first of all, like you became a minister. How was that journey? Because not a lot of mediums are ministers.
That journey was a trip. I started with the NSAC, which is the American version of the SNU. Um, and I did 2 years of that and graduated part one, and then was going to take part two, and then switched halfway through and did Janet Nohavec with the Journey Within her church's ordination and did that for 2 years instead. So I extended the process, but I was happy with the results. I became a minister because I like the spirituality aspect of mediumship and not just, getting names and dates and facts and figures, which are all very important, but it's the really helping people through their grief, connecting to someone who is in need and in some way, shape, or form, allowing them to be heard and understood, whether they're on the spirit side of life or in front of me as a client. So that part, kind of drew me in, and then that led me to the ministry.
Oh, that is beautiful. So I am curious, what did Janet teach? Did she teach that?
Yes, I was ordained by Janet. She was my teacher and mentor for those 2 years. And I was also simultaneously taking her mediumship classes at the Journey Within in person. This is all before COVID, obviously. And I studied with her for about 8 years.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
So I'm always
So,
curious. Oh, go ahead, Dana.
I was just going to interject, Bobby. So, every medium has that tutor or that special person they believe is really been involved in the progression of their mediumship and their spiritual side. Who would you consider your mainstay tutor? Is that Janet?
Definitely Janet, yes. Janet was the one that, believed in me when I didn't know what the heck I was doing. She's the one that pushed me into platform mediumship when I didn't think I was ready, and then pushed me into public DEMS, out there with her. So it's like people are coming to see her, and then I'm on the side, like kind of going, oh my God, what am I doing here? I'm with Janet Nohavec. But she had a way in believing in people, and then her belief in them made them believe in themselves. And
Beautiful.
so I know a lot of us that studied under her have talked about that and kind of have that as a common thread in our development. We could do it because Janet said we could, and that gave us a little bit of confidence to get up there in front of, 100 people or whatever it was, and with her and, for the church and whatever events that we did as charity for the church. So that's kind of how it all began with her. But she also had just this lovely way of understanding people and meeting people where they were and not judging anyone, just allowing them to be who they are. And she always used to say, it's all good. You know, you would have this moment where you wanted to pull your hair out and scream. And she's like, it's all good. And then it took me a while to kind of figure out what that meant. But it's true, because when you do have that trust in spirit and that confidence in spirit, it's all good. Whether you have a good dem, a bad dem, you're always touching someone. And, we're always our worst critics.
Yes.
And, sometimes when we go, oh my God, I didn't get that, or I didn't think that went well, you talk to people in the audience afterwards and they're like, oh my God, that was amazing. And it's your self-talk, that kind of gets in your own way.
And that's true, isn't it? It's one of the most difficult things, I think, as you're developing, is to maintain that consistency with confidence, just to get up there. And we all know when we've done a great connection, or for ourselves, we place judgment on that. How did Janet instill that? I mean, I know you said that she just had a way of saying it was all good, but was it in her presence? Was there certain ways that she responded with a connection that didn't land where it should? How did she instill that in her students?
It was definitely in her presence, and it was really in her teachings and in her being, that she was so ethical that if you just maintained your ethics and you didn't put on a show, you didn't pretend to be something you're not, or have a contact when you didn't, and you were honest about what you were doing and what you were getting, that aspect of it kind of really put you at ease, because this is what I'm getting. I can only give you what I'm getting. I can't make things up out of thin air. I'm talking to a spirit person, I'm connecting with them, so I have to be true to what they're giving me. And it might not always be what the sitter wants to hear, but you're the voice for the voiceless, and the voiceless is the person on the other side, not the sitter in front of you, which sometimes, as you all know, it can be very pressuring, because they're the ones paying you. They're the ones that are referring other people to you. So you want to please them and make them happy. But your main focus has to be being the voice for the person who can't speak for themselves. And sometimes that is great, because that's who they want to hear from. And that's the information they want to hear about. And then sometimes you get the people that are like, well, why did that come through? And why are they talking about that? And then all of a sudden, it's like 2 days later, they'll call you up and be like, you were talking about mom's Christmas ornaments, and I just opened the box and found them. And that's why she was talking about that, because she knew that that was going to come up for them, you know? So I always learned from her, trust, trust, trust. And when you think you've trusted enough, just trust some more, and then surrender into the experience. As mediums, I think we put so much pressure on ourselves, and we forget that we're part of the process, and we need to have fun as we're doing it. We need to have that, oh my God, I'm getting to know a new friend in the spirit world, and I'm getting to talk to that friend's loved one. And as I'm relaying the information to them, I'm experiencing this person, and I'm having a spiritual experience, regardless of the evidence that I'm saying. I'm having that moment with my spirit and the universe, God, whatever you want to call it. That connection to that spirit world gives us as the medium something that we don't always acknowledge.
Mm.
Yeah.
And Bobby, I know that you were talking about going further on and beginning the platform from one-to-one, and Janet sounds like she propped all her students up and encouraged them to get out there to get that confidence. But when you're going into a public arena and you've got a number of people in front of you, what does Bobby the medium do? Do you have a ritual or a moment to prepare yourself? Because I know Mavis Patilla, I always thought she had the Rhinestone Cowboy music she'd put on to sort of pump her up to get on. Do you have anything like that?
Well, once I tell my heart to stop beating fast and unknock my knees, yes, I do. I try to listen to uplifting music. Um, I really like Dana Wiener, is Conquest of Paradise. That one always gets me going, because it's very energetic music, and just the lyrics of it are very special. And it was one of Janet's favorites, so she used to play that at the church all the time. So now that she's passed, I always listen to that, because it reminds me of her. Anyway, but then I get myself ready, quiet my mind, my monkey mind, and I call in, Janet. I call in my dad, because he was a really good public speaker. And I call in my godfather, who was a professor. So he was a really, really good public speaker. Because I'm at this point, I don't think I'm nervous about the mediumship aspect. I'm nervous that there's, 100 pair of eyes on me, or 200 pair of eyes on me. And it's like, oh my God, do I sound coherent? Am I making sense? Because, as the medium, what you're feeling, but sometimes putting the word to that feeling can be a little bit difficult because it's not quite this, but it's not quite that. And you have to figure the word that goes with the emotion that you're feeling. So I always call them in because they were very smart and intellectual and, kind of give me the accurate word that's going to be, concise. So it's not, word going on and on and on and too wordy and I lose the plot, That was a
Well, actually,
long-winded answer.
no, it was very thorough, and actually made me my mind went to when you mentioned your father in spirit. Um, is that we usually ask guests, about their development in mediumship, where they started, and if they had the support of family, or what was their family's opinions around that. How did medium show up for you, Bobby? And you're calling on your dad, so obviously he was in support of what you did. If you could just
Actually not. Actually,
oh,
he was not. Um, he has since he passed, actually, he was in a coma and he came through like 2 days before he passed, where, their spirit is more on the other side than it is on this side. Um,
yes.
and they gave me some evidence, and obviously he hadn't passed yet. So some of it made sense, some of it didn't. And some of it I had to kind of piece together. But about a week after he passed, Simone Key brought him through on one of the Journey Within services. And she had him to a T. And he was like, I didn't get all this stuff, but I do now. And I'm going to help you with it. And she said, you're going to develop a relationship with him that's totally different than what you had here on the earth plane. And it's going to be something that is going to be what you really wanted to experience in life, but didn't get a chance to. But going back to my development in mediumship, it started as a child. I kind of knew things that a 3-year-old wouldn't know. And my mom said, like, she would put me on the table and I would talk to the neighbors and talk to them as if I was a grown person. I don't remember that, but that's what she told me. I do remember having very prophetic dreams when I was younger, 8, 9, 10. I had a dream that someone's going to break into our house through my bedroom window, cut the screen with a knife, blah, 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 blah. Every single thing happened exactly as I saw it in the dream. He cut the screen through the knife. It was my bedroom window. My mom came in screaming. Everything happened. That kind of scared me. So I kind of put that aside. And my parents were Greek Orthodox, so very religious people, and they didn't understand any of this. And then when I was in my 20s, I started researching different religions, just trying to figure out where I fit in. So I read up on Buddhism, I read up on the Kabbalah, and I got a book on the chakras by accident. And I was reading it at work one day, and this lady goes to me, "Oh, you're into that?" And I said, "No, but every one of my chakras is broken." And she said, "No, it's not." And she took me to a spiritualist church like a couple of weeks later. And I went in there so skeptical. So this is nonsense. I don't know what these people are talking about. And, but I went out of curiosity. And I left there and I was still a skeptic, but I kept going back. So I guess the skepticism started passing. But I often encourage people to be a skeptic. And it sounds weird as the medium to tell people to be a skeptic, but you have to have that aspect of skepticism because you want to make sure that, when the medium says, I have your loved one, that they really, in fact, have that particular loved one. And there's no question in your mind. You don't walk away going, they said they had my grandmother, but which grandmother do they really have? And it's like sometimes people have similarities and you really want to know who they connected to and where the message is coming from, especially like Janet used to say, if somebody is giving you financial information, or telling you you're going through hardships financially or whatever, and the medium brings that up, and it's from Aunt Sue, who was broke, had credit card debt, do you really want to listen to financial information from her? Or, if it's your uncle who had his own business, was an entrepreneur, made millions of dollars, he gives you financial information, you might want to take notice. Obviously, we're all human beings and we all have personal responsibility. So I don't believe that anybody should say, the medium told me to do it or the psychic told me to do it, so I did it. You have to use your own critical thinking and do what you feel is right. But, it's just like friends that we have on the earth plane. You ask certain people that have this skill about that subject, and you go to somebody else for another subject.
Oh, that is amazing. I am sitting here listening to your story, so I am curious. That dream you had about the person breaking into your house, how old were you when that happened?
I was 8 years old, and I had that dream repeatedly for about 4 days before it happened. And the first time I had it, I was screaming hysterically. Me and my sister at the time shared a room. So she woke up and said, "Shut up." And I went back to sleep, and the dream continued. So I screamed so loudly that my mom and dad ran into my room, my dad in his little boxers. And he's going, "What happened? What happened?" I'm like, "Somebody's at the window." He looks out the window. There's nobody there. And he starts yelling at me because I woke him up and he had to be at work at 7 a.m. But it's the synchronicity. Sometimes, especially with things that are going to happen in the future, as people that do psychic readings know, we can know what's going to happen or how it's going to happen, but there's no time. I got that warning 4 days in advance, and then 3 days in advance, 2 days in advance, and then it happened on the fourth day. So, you don't necessarily know when, but the
Yeah.
spirit world or the universe will always kind of give you a little hint if you're open to it, I believe.
Do you still get dreams like that?
Very rarely. I wish I
Yeah.
could go back and get them again, but I kind of like turned that off when I was younger out of fear and
Yeah.
haven't been able to quite get that back. I do often get spirit visitations from my dreams. And then, of course, you question them. But one amazing one that happened was after my dad passed away. It must have been like 3 or 4 weeks. He came into my room and I was asleep, but I saw him and we kind of astral traveled.
Oh,
Okay, where I felt like I was floating outside of my body and I could see myself on the bed. And he took me into a hospital, and there was an old man that was in the bed, and the man passed away. And I was shown what happens to the soul as it leaves the body. And then I was like, "Oh my God, I know that was my dad." And then I woke up, and I was like, "I know that was my dad. I know that was my dad." And then days passed, and I go, "Did you just dream that and you want it to be your dad?" And I found an Andrew Jackson Davis book that I had purchased a year and a half before and never read it because it has the old English and it's really hard to kind of follow along. So I think I read half a page and was like, "I can't read this," and just randomly opened it up. And there was a drawing in the book of exactly what I was shown and a description of exactly what happens to the human soul as it leaves the body. And I was like, "Oh my God, it was real. I knew it was real. I knew it was real." I was just my doubt afterwards. So that was one of the cool visitations that I remember that had like tangible proof to it afterwards, because I didn't read that part of the book and didn't
yeah.
know about any of that.
You know what I find interesting after the passing of my dad, like my dad passed away last year in October, every time I do a dem, first thing in the morning, I go to get my cup of coffee. I feel him right beside me. It's like we're going to work together. I think that's so cool. It's like his new job. Support me
It
on
is
platform.
It is so cool. And it's so cool when you work with other mediums that can um give you confirmation of that. So I remember one time in Christine's class, I felt we were doing the sitting in the power in the beginning of class. And I felt my dad on the left side. I could see his mustache and I could feel his breath on me that close. And then became out of the power. And Christine goes, Bobby, your father was standing right beside you on the left side, like really close. And I was like, yeah, I know, I felt him. And it was so cool just to get that confirmation. So it's like, oh, there's not a shadow of doubt in your mind because somebody else saw it too.
Yeah.
So I think they give you those confirmations when they know you're going to doubt because they know we're human and we have our doubts.
I know it's my dad because he loves coffee. So first thing in the morning, cup of coffee together, and then we're off to work on doing our dems that day. I think it's so cool. Dana, you want to say something?
Was just going to say, I mean, it's beautiful that both of you sense your father and spirit supporting work that you do. Equally, do you have an understanding or an idea, Bobby, of anyone else that works with you in the spirit world? And how does that show up for you? Do you feel their presence? Just get a knowing, or is there something that leads up, like a vision, or as you said, that book that just cements that felt presence?
Well, I definitely believe we all have a spirit team. Whether you want to call them guides or you want to call them ascended masters or whatever terminology different people use, I think it's the same thing. It's your spirit team. It's people on the other side that care about your development and want to help you. And I have met a number of them through meditation, through sitting in the power. And at this point, I just feel their presence. I don't have to see them. I don't have to hear them. I just feel them. And then I know I'm good. And then I'm off and running. Then it gets, those moments when you don't feel them and you're going, oh my God, is they still there? And they are. They're always there. It's like spirit. It's only a breath away.
I love that. I think that's so cool.
Actually, you just took my mind on a little journey. I was following you as you were talking, kind of blending with you actually as you were talking. So I kind of want to just go back just a little bit, Bobby, because we quite often meet people, particularly online, when they've already got that public presence. They've already arrived into that being seen and validated for the level of mediumship which they provide and the comfort they gift others. But just take me back to the beginning meeting, Bobby, the beginning medium. What would you say was your biggest difficulty you had when you were beginning out in your development? I just think it's encouraging for listeners, and a lot of them are developing and learning.
For me, it was definitely trusting myself, and I think like many beginners, we trust the spirit world completely because we think that they're all knowing and all powerful and all of that. But it's trusting myself and trusting that I'm going to say it right or convey it in the right way. And that is the biggest hurdle to overcome, I feel, for most mediums. Um, the level of evidence is going to come with time, so if you're a beginner medium and you just feel like you're not getting the evidence, it's going to come as you develop and as you're open to it. And the work that we have to do on ourselves being so important, because if we have hangups on a specific issue or a specific subject or a specific family member, like people choose with mom. Sometimes when a mom from the spirit world comes in, it's going to feel uncomfortable for them. So I think that we have to always look within ourselves to help us in our mediumship and see what are my hangups and how can I get rid of them? Because if I don't, they're just going to keep being mirrored back to me with every contact that I bring a mom, a dad, a brother, or sister, in with. So I think that the self-work, the spiritualizing of ourselves is something that a lot of mediums don't take the time to do. And you see it as great as they are, and as evidential as they may be. For me personally, this is just my opinion, so don't kill me out there if you're an evidential medium and this is you. But I think that if it's fact, first people are going to be like, oh my God, that's amazing. Oh my God, I can't believe they got that. And then it's going to come to a place where it's like, okay, mm-hmm. But are you going to bring through the personality and the character and the emotional aspect to the person? And if you haven't done that spiritual work on yourself and you can't handle your own emotions, you're never going to be able to fully understand the emotions of a complex spiritual person that's now on the other side, because it's
Agreed,
not like
Bobby.
they're not going to be able to tell you that. You're going to feel that as you feel them. And if you
Yes.
can't process those emotions, you're not going to be able to convey that the right way.
Well, I think that brings us to the topic of a lot of us that are sensitive and struggle with that vulnerability. And there may be experiences in our life that, we have to address as we develop. But I think that, as you said, really makes for a beautiful medium as that spiritual development happens alongside with that mediumship development. You get that whole medium, don't you, at the end, and that
Mhm.
movement of the heart. So, in your opinion, Bobby, what makes for, I guess you would have seen other wonderful mediums demonstrate in the past, but what really sticks out in your mind as what makes for an excellent medium?
I think definitely there has to be the level of evidence, because you don't want it to be fluff. Okay. But they have that vulnerability that you just said to go into the emotion and go into the connection and that personal relationship. Because, I have a dad here who fished and he caught striped bass and he had a boat that was named Miranda and he went on it every Saturday. It's very nice. But if you could tell the son that's sitting in front of you, and on that boat, you two would have had these meaningful conversations. And one of these conversations was about your direction in life. And you felt understood in that moment by your dad. It's going to touch that person much more deeply. I think when we're talking about platform, there has to be a vulnerability as well to be yourself and
Mm.
to command your stage and have fun on your stage, but have reverence for what you're doing. So you don't want to be a comedian, you don't want to be a practical joker, but you want to have fun. You want the audience to feel like you're enjoying what you're doing. And, if you have a lively person in the spirit world, you have to find that place within you that's lively and bring that to life as well. Because you can't say, I have your mom here and she's so lively. She's the life of the party. And you're monotone. You know, it's just not going to convey the same impact. So the mediums that I admire really do become that person. And the one that comes to mind with that is as a perfect example of that is if you guys have ever seen Eileen Davis, Dem, you know, she's so sweet and she's so lovely, and you just want to give her the biggest squeeze because she's just a ball of love. But she's quiet and she's a little bit reserved. And then when all of a sudden she gets up and does a mediumship contact, she's loud and she's bold and she's animated and it's like she's a powerhouse, and she's not that little quiet and reserved Scottish woman when she's demming. And that's that coming to life of that aspect of her soul that's connecting to the spirit soul. So that is what I'm attracted to in mediumship. Really the joy of the medium and the level of evidence, because you can't have one or the other. It has to be both. It has to be a coming together.
So I'm curious, Bobby, do you remember the very first time you did the platform by yourself?
Mm.
Or do you guys always do it in pairs?
I remember the first time that I did platform to begin with. And this was at a little spiritualist church for the NSAC in Greenwich, Connecticut. And I was so nervous, and I was so nervous to be in front of an audience. And then to top it all off, we had to speak in microphones. So I hated that too. And no one could take my contact. And no one took it. It's the only time that it's ever happened to me. And I sat down so confidently. I said, I know one of you is going to think about this and let me know that you understand it later. So if you'd like to talk to me after service, that's fine. And that actually did happen. But I sat down a ball of nerves because, oh my God, nobody took my contact. And then I said, you know what? I don't care. I stood up for spirit and I overcame a huge fear of mine as a way of showing my commitment to the spirit world. And I took that as a win, just that act of standing up in spite of my fears, in spite of my insecurities and whatever. And luckily, it's the only time that happened. Knock on wood.
I was just going to say that, touch wood, Bobby.
Yeah. Because I will say, I have heard stories where mediums will get on platform, no one will take the contact, and then they quit mediumship for a period of time. So I love that you did not do that. And do you think that's part of the Janet training too, to trust?
Well, that actually happened before Janet.
Oh,
That happened probably 6 months before I met Janet and ever went to the Journey Within or knew anything about the Journey Within. But I just think it's my dialogue with the spirit world. I think it's what I was saying before of having that connection with the spirit world, and coming to a place of I did my best. I offered everything that I could offer, and I stood up for you. And I'd love to work with you, and I'm here for you. And then they hear that, and they'll give you more, or they'll give you something different to help you through the next bump in the road, because they know you're committed to them, and you're committed to them, and they're committed to you. So it's a circular connection. And I love that Mavis Patilla used to say when she did a gem, she would sit and ask the spirit world, how was that for you?
hmm.
How many of us go, oh my God, that was
Mm.
great. And then we go to the bar and have a drink because we're all happy and we're celebrating. And we forget it was them that did everything. We were just a voice, and we don't give that time of gratitude and that time of, hey, did I represent you in the best way possible? So it's never us. Without them, we can't do anything. So, you know, it's one of those moments where you have to pull your ear and let the hot air out. It's not you.
Bobby, I just had to touch in the time you're talking about the journey within. So I know that you're an ordained minister, but you're actually teaching. Is that correct?
I have been lucky enough to teach for a number of years, all different classes from tarot to psychic to mediumship to advanced mediumship. So I love teaching. I love, seeing that special thing in one of the students, excuse me, and really nurturing them through it, and, being able to be a support to them, because we all needed that support in the beginning. And it's like paving the way for the next generation, and really leaving something of yourself in that, in that road ahead. So I think that teaching is very fun. I think that too many people start teaching too quickly. And you really need the time for your own development before you can start sharing something that you don't fully have for yourself yet. So I do feel like teaching is amazing. It opens your mediumship in a way that very few things do. It's I always like to, when I teach, double link in with my students so I can feel where they're stuck and kind of help them through it. So as I do that, I'm actually practicing my own mediumship, but also having to understand them and why they got stuck. So it's a little bit of a psychic connection with them. It's a little bit of a mediumistic connection. Excuse me. And it just brings everything together. And then, it brings out that nurturing quality in all of us where you want your student to do good.
So what's your favorite part, Bobby? I know you do one-to-ones, you do platform, you're an ordained minister. So you're obviously doing those addresses in the church, but you're also teaching. But we spoke briefly before the show even about spirit art. You're actually an artist as well.
I am an artist, yes. And I do spirit art. I love my autographs. With the spirit portraiture, I'm still trying to get my likeness more consistent. I feel like one picture will look exactly like the person. And then the next one, the sitter's like, oh my God, it looks exactly like them. And then I see the picture and I'm going, no, it doesn't look anything like them. Thank you so much for trying. But, you know, so I don't do that as much, not because I don't love it, but really because I want to hone that skill. So I do it more for practice than I do as a public service, because I wouldn't want to bring that out if it's not fully polished. And that's just
So
a
where would you
perfectionist in me.
so where would you say your joy is, Bobby?
My joy is interconnection. I really think I'm a very social person. I'm a Pisces. We love being around people. We love talking. Um, and the connection with other people, you know, is one of my favorite things. It's like even just going to a mediumship class or going to a lecture or whatever, it's you're surrounded by like-minded people, and that community and that fellowship coming together, and really not having to worry about, you know, does this person understand what I'm saying, or that person out in the real world, quote unquote, do they get me? You know, in your community, in your church, in your classes, you're fully understood, and they think like you, they get you because they have an aspect of that within themselves. So it's really the connection.
Oh, that
Beautiful.
is very cool. I am curious, Bobby, because you mentioned earlier, or what was it? Orographs. For those
Mhm.
that are listening and have no idea what that is, can you tell our listeners and viewers what that is?
So orographs is more of a psychic reading, although you do connect into your mediumistic ability to connect to guides. But I have my sitters for orograph. I have them just send me a picture of themselves, and I meditate on the picture, and I pull out symbols, spirit guides, anything that I feel in their auric field from that picture. So it's like psychometrizing their picture, so to speak. And then all the symbols, all the images, all the guides or whatever I feel for them, I sketch it out. And then I bring the drawing to the reading, and then I give a 45-minute reading to them about what each thing is and how it incorporates into their life. And so I feel like it's so much more powerful than just a regular psychic reading, which I love. I love my tarot readings. I'm a tarot reader before I even knew what mediumship was, and my heart always is there. Um, but I feel like, first of all, it's your own drawing, so there's a sense of I got to be free and artistic and not just have a picture on a card to deal with. Um, but it also, you get to not just say you have an Indian guide here, and you know, there's no proof of that one way or the other, but when you really get it from their aura, I feel like you get examples of how that Indian influence comes into their life, whether they have a collection of, you know, sedimentary rocks or crystals or whatever, or they have a, you know, affinity to Native American, and I go to museums all the time or whatever it is. You know, it's that proof that it's in their life, not just you have a Chinese guide and he's worth you and he works with you, and that's great. You're actually giving them the proof of how he is a part of their life and what the common interests are for them to connect with him, even though they might not know that that person exists.
Oh, I like that. That is very cool. What do you think, Dana?
Well, I've never actually had an aurograph done, but I might have to get you to one for me, Bobby.
Oh,
I
yeah,
want
I
to
would
have
love
that
that.
experience because I quite often see colors on my sitters and feel into the colors because I guess with mentorship with Mavis Patilla, you're not going to get away with it unless you do the color work and the chakras because she was quite big on that. But yeah, I'm very, very interested in actually having that experience, even as a learning tool.
It
Yes.
is an amazing experience. I mean, I did loads and loads and loads of them. I think all of my friends hated me because I was like, "Hi, can you send me a picture? I'm doing an autograph for you." hope you like it, this is your birthday present, but it was like dealing with so many different people and different personalities. You really got to experience that A, it's real. B, you're good at what you're doing and you're getting it accurate. And then, always practicing for free first. And then when you're charged, you're more confident because, for me, I'm always like, oh my God, they're paying for this. I have to deliver, and that just adds that added pressure to it. So yeah, I would definitely recommend you trying it, trying to draw in your mediumship, even if it's just squiggles at first, just having a pen or a pencil next to you and a piece of paper and just see what happens.
Oh, that is
Mm.
awesome. I am curious if people want to get a reading from you like that, is it in person or can they do it over Zoom with you?
Most of them nowadays after COVID are on Zoom.
Okay.
So yeah, I usually mail the person the picture of the drawing. But I would hold it up to the screen and go over the detail in the picture. So for the purpose of the reading, and then mail them the drawing.
Oh, that is so cool, Dana. I think we need a
And we'll
reading.
have all those contact details, like Maria, with the podcast. So, Bobby, just looking forward now, we've heard about your journey, but looking forward to the future. What excites you, Bobby? Is there something that you have planned or coming up?
I'm spreading my wings is the way I'm putting it now. So for a period of time, we get in our comfort bubble where we're comfortable in this development area. So I feel pretty confident in my mediumistic abilities and my psychic abilities. So I'm starting to develop trance, which I've always been interested in, but a little bit nervous of, am I making it up? Is it really coming from me, or is it coming from the spirit world, or is it my mind just kind of like giving me things and I think it's the spirit world? So I'm really surrendering into trance now, which is exciting. But I'm also spreading my wings in terms of, I recently did a church service for a British church on Zoom, and that went really well. And they asked us to come back and trying to just do different experiences with different people and not just stay in my comfort bubble.
Oh, I love that. I I love how just listening to you for this time that we're together, you're so inspiring, Bobby. Did you realize how inspiring you are?
Thank you. I don't realize it, but I hope to inspire people. But we don't always see that quality in ourselves. We always see it in somebody else. Oh, that person's so charismatic. That person's so inspiring. And most of us have that within us too. We don't just pay attention to it or see it. Thank you for letting me know that.
You're welcome.
And on that note, Bobby, if we've got the beginner mediums, the developing medium listening, what would be your one key piece of advice for them to take through on the journey?
You may have a plan of what you think you're going to do and how you think it's going to go. Throw that out the window because it's not going to go the way you think it should. And what's that saying? When you make plans, God laughs. It's totally true because you start here and you think you're just going to go here. And mediumship is really, and then it never stops. You're always going to be learning. You're always going to be growing. You're always going to be developing. You can be doing mediumship for 25 years, 30 years. If you're not developing and growing, it's time for you to stop doing mediumship. Because life is always growing and changing. And I mean, look at the times we live in now, versus, a medium 50 years ago, just the life experience of how many people have tattoos and how many people have piercings and all of that was something they never had to deal with, let alone, gender identity and all of that stuff that's now being added to the mix. I just think that in 20 years from now, it's going to be so interesting to see where mediumship is and what kind of evidence comes through to get somebody claimed.
Oh, I think that's
So
beautiful.
where do you see yourself in 20 years' time, Bobby?
Hopefully retired on a beach sipping a margarita, but no.
That's the visual
No.
I got.
No, I really, I don't think I would ever give this up. I mean, my dad, like we mentioned, has passed, and I had to step away for a period of time, because I did inherit his business. So I had to run that in memory of him and to keep it going for my sisters and myself and his legacy. But mediumship has always been there, and I never ever closed a door on it. Any opportunity that I could take an advantage of, I did. Um, so I think in 20 years' time, I will be doing the same thing. Any opportunity, I'll be with a walker, but I'll be like, please let me jam at your church.
I love
Well,
that.
I hope you never lose that joy or passion for spirit, Bobby, because it's very transparent, not just in your voice, but just in that movement that you have around you when you talk about your love of the spirit world. Beautiful. Thank you.
That
Thank you.
is beautiful. Thank you. So we are coming to the end of our podcast. And Bobby, what is the name of your website so people know where to find you? I will have all the clickable links available, but just for those that are listening right now.
So it's www.readingsbybobby.com.
Beautiful. So if you guys are listening and you're interested in getting a reading with Bobby, just head on over to his website. If you want to see him do DEMS at the Journey Within or learn from him, just, reach out to him and connect with him. I want to say thank you so much, both of you, Miss Dana in Australia, Bobby in the US.
Oh, I love being here. Thank you for having me again. And lovely to see you, Bobby.
Thank you.
Lovely seeing you, and thank you for inviting me here. It's been amazing.
Thank you, everybody. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.